Streaming and let's talk about last year for a second. I mentioned this moment to you right before the interview. I got to throw it back to the NLCS Game 6. Luke Jackson, who we just mentioned, has a rare struggle for last year. 2 runners on, second and third, 7th inning, in Game 6 against the Dodgers.
The greatest setup man ever here. You know, like sometimes your struggles make some people great, and Tyler doesn't thank me enough for putting him in such a great situation with second and third no outs. But he stepped up, and probably the 3 biggest strikeouts I think of the whole playoff run. And
you come out, you not only face, you have no outs with runners on, but you face 3 righties. I was there. I know what the stadium was like. I've never seen it quite like that before that, and I don't know that I'll ever see it like that since. Walk me through coming out of the pen.
Yeah, I was out there in the pen. I said, hey, Matt, so you're kind of going to cover Luke, so kind of just be ready, moving around. I said, okay, sounds good. And then I saw Luke getting into a little bit of trouble. And so I turned it on in the pen, and, I just wanted to get out there and help Luke. I knew that he was struggling a little bit, just didn't have it that night. And then I was feeling pretty good, so I was like, hey, let me at him. I want to get out there. I want to go and help my boy who's struggling right now. So they call me in, and, in that situation, runners on second and third, the first out is the most important one. We get a first out, it frees up, being able to walk, set up a double play, that whole thing. And the best way to do that, get that first out, was to get a strikeout.
I don't want to overlook who you struck out. Number one being Albert Pujols, who's, at the tail end of his career, but is having a monster year this year. But a legendary hitter. Souza, and then, of course, Mookie Betts.
It's one of those things that you'll remember for the 2021 World Series. That inning, those plays, those outs, all huge.
I mean, that's one of those moments that you can't replicate unless it happens this year, of course. But, again, just a great moment. And, did you know then that this team, was going to win the World Series? Is that when you knew, or was it later?
When we still had to win that game. I think getting past the Dodgers was a huge task for us. They'd stopped us the year before. But yeah, once we were able to shut down that inning, we trusted. I was able to go back out and get another, an solid eighth inning, and I felt like we were in a good position to win. Will came out, did his thing, and off to the World Series we went.
Fans, you're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Welcome into On Deck. As always, thank you guys so much for checking out the channel. Really do appreciate it. Obviously, a big win tonight for the Atlanta Braves. We're going to get into that in just a second, but before we get started, please do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything going on with the Atlanta Braves, and of course, to support the channel. Another way you can support the channel is by checking out the On Deck shop, which of course you can check out the QR code over there. There's also a link down below. We have all kinds of stuff there, and since I have a prop tonight, I'm going to show it to you. We got these new On Deck hats. They are on the site, so go check it out. Great price and really a great product. I really would love to see these all around Truist Park this season, so go check that out. Again, the On Deck shop is down below. All right, so let's talk about tonight's game against the Mets. Really tonight, we're not just talking about tonight's game. We're talking about the series in general, right? Because I think we kind of have to give a complete retrospective of this series. And it really has put one team in a really good spot, and it's put another team on the opposite end of the spectrum. Of course, tonight was the Braves' 5th win in a row. It was the Mets' 6th loss in a row. And that's really been the trend here lately. But no, this was a great game, a series that started out with Bryce Elder on the mound and Pete Alonso chanting, "Throw it again." I'm going to let you guys simmer on that one and make up your own minds of how to feel about that. But it caused a big stir among Braves fans and Mets fans, really. But the ultimate thing here is that it ended with the Braves on top 3-0 in a 3-game series. That's the only thing we can ask for. And really in a period of time where the Braves could be struggling. I mean, this is the period of time where I thought they would struggle. They've actually done fairly well without two of their biggest arms in the starting rotation being Kyle Wright and Max Fried. So there's a big, what could have been a big issue. The Braves have seemed to navigate through that fairly well considering the circumstances. Still plenty to take a look at, plenty to kind of recognize could be better. I think the bullpen has been the one that has been the most commonly pointed at thing, like, hey, at the trade deadline, we're going for some bullpen help, right? I think we all assumed that, but time will tell. But tonight, the bullpen was the one thing that was actually doing well. Spencer Strider, if we're honest, really struggled tonight. We'll get into that in just a minute. But the bullpen, I wanted to point out, in the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th innings, the Mets did not score a run. So Joe Jimenez covered 2 innings. The Spencer Strider did not pitch well. I don't believe made it past the 6th inning, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. Joe Jimenez threw 2 scoreless. Jesse Chavez threw 1 scoreless. Navigated through some trouble, I might add. And Raisel Iglesias, of course, shut the door. During that time, that's really when the Braves came back, because in the 8th inning, they scored 2. In the 9th inning, of course, Orlando Arcia tied it up with a huge clutch homer. And in the 10th, Ozzie Albies with a 3-run walk-off homer. Doesn't get much better than that. But I told you, again, we're going to kind of talk about the entire series. Of course, in Game 1, at one time, the Mets had a 4-1 lead. The Braves came back from that. In Game 2, they had a 4-1 lead. The Braves came back from that. Tonight, oh boy, did they have a lead. The Braves took the lead in the first, 3-0. The Mets took it back in the second, 5 unanswered in the second. Eventually, they would get out to a 6-3 lead, but the Braves would start fighting back, made it a 6-5 game. This really was a back-and-forth game at all points. But no, the Braves kept fighting, and that's the thing here. I mentioned the other day to someone, I haven't been able to talk to you guys for in a minute. Lots happened since I talked to you last. But since then, Arizona happened. The series in Arizona happened. And if you remember last year, there was a series in Arizona where the Braves were 10.5 games back. And Snit had a closed-door team meeting. And we all heard about it, but it was closed door. No one saw what happened within those walls at the time. But that was a meeting that seemed to turn around the season. I say that because the series that happened for the Braves the other day with Arizona, I think, turned it around in a different way. There was another meeting between the team. Again, we don't know what was said in those meetings, but what we do know is that the Braves lost Game 1, 3-2, close game. I believe that was the game where Ozuna did not run out of the box. I could be wrong on that. But they won the next 2, and there was an excitement about them, a rejuvenation, I might say. But either way, they carried that momentum into this series. And I think that momentum is going to carry much further, because going into the next series, which of course starts tomorrow at 7:20, the Braves host the Nationals for 3 games, and then they go and face the Tigers. Now, the Tigers have been better this year, but if the Braves can bring their best baseball at these next couple of series, they really could take advantage going forward, because you have the Nationals, you have the Tigers, you have the Rockies, who aren't necessarily doing very good. After that, you get a little tougher. You got a division rival with the Phillies that you will actually go into their ballpark and then head to Cincinnati. And I know a lot of people aren't really studying Cincinnati much these days, but they've really proven to have some young guys and have some excitement in their ballpark too. So you have a tough road ahead after those few series. In the next 10 games or so, the Braves, I think, are going to be able to rattle off a few key wins to be able to, again, further their lead. And this isn't something that I think a lot of us expected. The reason I say that is when Max Fried went down, when Kyle Wright went down, we were like, oh man, well, they might lose the first place in the division to the Mets or to the Marlins or whoever it may be. But whenever Max Fried comes back, whenever Kyle Wright comes back, or maybe Soroka will do well and carry the rotation a little bit, whenever that happens, that's when the Braves will really strike and be at full power. Guys, let's be honest. They haven't really missed a step. I mean, they've had ups and downs like every team does, but it hasn't felt like a collapse. It hasn't felt like, I'll compare it to something. Before we traded for Jock Peterson in 2021, there was this feeling of, oh, the season is over. Acuna was hurt. The pitching wasn't necessarily what it needed to be. There were things we needed. Ozuna was gone. There was a number of things that made it feel like, oh, this year's not the year, right? If you remember that, you know what I'm talking about. Then we signed Jock Peterson. We trade for Jock Peterson early on, and it's an instant feeling of, okay, we might have something here. Then what I think is the greatest trade deadline by any team ever happens later on that season. And we all know what happened from there. They go on to win the World Series. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is there's never been that effect this season. You've never felt like the season was over. You've never felt like that the Braves have no chance at winning today, right? You've never felt that way. Not really. Even when the starting pitcher may not be there, the offense probably will be, right? Guys, they scored, the Mets scored 10 runs today and didn't win. That's a crazy thing, right? Now, it would have been just as bad if we scored 9 and didn't win, right? But there were some key moments that I want to really highlight tonight. Number one, I think the homers. Riley homered in the first. That was a 3-run shot. Really, I was like, okay, well, we see how this one's going to go, but we had a long road ahead. Ozuna homered in the 5th. D'Arnaud homered a 2-run shot. Later on, I believe in the 8th. That was a big one. That made it 10-9. It brought the Braves back into the game, really. Arcia in the bottom of the 9th. Solo shot to tie the game. I don't think anyone saw that one coming. And then, of course, Albies. It was really who's going to hit last, right? And it turned out to be the one and only Ozzie Albies. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Albies was 0 for 4 tonight, if I'm not mistaken, before that. And he wanted to get on the action. The Braves hit 19 hits tonight. They got 19 hits tonight. Ozzie Albies accounted for one of them, but boy, was it a good one. So credit to Ozzie Albies. There were 13 runs scored tonight, like I mentioned earlier, 10 of them off of homers. That tells you how important the long ball is to this Braves club. And, really tonight, how important the bullpen was. Because this game really could have got out of hand. It technically did, if you want to look at it that way. Obviously, 10 runs scored. But, again, they all scored before the 7th inning. The bullpen shut it down. And you have to give them credit when credit's due. Credit's due. So credit to the bullpen. Credit to Joe Jimenez, who had a good appearance, which is, honestly this year has been fairly rare to see, not to mention 2 innings scoreless out of him, which is a good thing to see. Gives me some confidence going forward. Jesse Chavez, again, navigated through some trouble, but that's a good thing, right? We saw what Chavez can do. I think the bullpen will likely be improved at the trade deadline. I think it needs to be improved at the trade deadline. Knowing Alex Anthopoulos, I would be surprised if it wasn't. I also wanted to talk about this. Chipper Jones tonight was in the booth alongside John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, and Jeff Francoeur, which, by the way, for a guy my age who grew up watching these guys, was really cool to see. And I thought Bally did an excellent job putting it together. My brother sitting right there, he says that there needs to be more play-by-play, but I'll let you guys decide on that. Either way, it was very good to see those guys, 3 Hall of Famers, and of course Jeff Francoeur, in the booth. And it was a fun night, and I think I had fun watching it. You probably did too. There were some funny stories told. Smoltz with the wig. They called Greg Maddux randomly. All great things, right? But Chipper Jones said something earlier, and I really wanted to talk about this. I knew the moment he said it, I was going to want to talk about it. He was talking about Orlando Arcia. And, of course, Orlando Arcia signed to a 3-year deal. Not a deal that's going to blow off the charts, right? It's not a deal that is going to be a big market deal. It was kind of a sleeper deal when it happened. It's like, oh, well, they're signing him for depth, right? That's all it is. They're just signing to keep him around for depth, long term, because he does do well off the bench, stuff like that. But no, they signed him for 3 years, $7.3 million, and the guy, this is what Chipper said tonight about it, and it was perfectly put, I thought. The guy is the steal of the year. Name a player who is signed to that type of deal right now that is a better get than Orlando Arcia this year. You can't do it. And you can point to me and say, well, this guy's doing better, that guy's doing better. I'll name the elephant in the room. Dansby Swanson may be doing better, right? I would take a look at the stats. That's all I'm going to say about that. And for what we're paying Orlando Arcia, averaging around 2 point something a year, I mean, that's pretty good. And I'm gonna read off the stats real quickly as I pull it up. No, but again, Chipper said it perfectly tonight that he is the steal of the year. At least he has been so far. And guys, I remember being in the offseason, and whenever the Braves quote unquote lost Dansby Swanson, a lot of you guys, I'm not calling any of you out, but a lot of you guys were unsure of the road ahead, rightfully so. Very similar to how the Freeman saga went. You were happy with Olsen, but still you're losing Freddie, right? You guys weren't really happy that we were losing Dansby. Again, I understand that. But now, taking into account that the guy plays really good defense, the guy is a monster at the plate. All he does is hit. By the way, 317 batting average on the year. It went up tonight. This is Baseball Reference. It's got an update. 4 homers before tonight. He got his 5th tonight. 1.6 WAR probably went up tonight. Guys, the guy's been phenomenal. And, of course, he was part of that 2021 World Series team. But, again, what a steal. At that price, you cannot beat it. And, guys, that credit really belongs to one guy, other than Orlando Arcia, of course. That's Alex Anthopoulos. Alex Anthopoulos, I have told you so many times before, but it has to be stated in times like these. There is not another GM that I want over Alex Anthopoulos. And I think a perfect representation of that is the standings right now. Because if I go look at the standings right now, the Braves are obviously in first place with a 3.5 game lead over the Mets, right? Or a 3.5 game lead over the Marlins. I apologize. The Mets are in third place. And this is where I'm going with this. Some of you probably already know. The Mets are, I'm sorry. The Phillies are in third place. The Mets, fourth place. They're 8.5 games back. They're getting close to that 10.5 game mark. So I'm not going to be the guy to tell you the NL East is over because you will not hear me say that. In fact, don't even act like I said it because I didn't. The NL East is not over, not by a long shot. The Marlins are too close, and after last year, you're not gonna hear me say that. The reason I bring it up now, and it's early, I get all that, but the Mets have started their season in an abysmal fashion. They have lost to bad teams. They have not played well. Their pitching has not been what they paid for, and that's really the crux of this argument. What they're paying is absolutely ridiculous. The reason I say that, not only is it the highest payroll in baseball, it is the highest payroll in sports history. Do you realize how ridiculous that is? Because if I had the highest payroll in baseball history and I'm sitting at fourth place 8.5 games back, I'm scratching my head wondering what's going on. And for those of you, if you're a Mets fan, I apologize for what I'm about to say. But for those of them calling out Buck Showalter, I can't get with that. The manager's not the issue there. There is a fundamental issue in the organization. If you spend that much money and you're seeing these results, the plan you put in place ain't working. And it starts from the top. And I'm not saying it's the guy with the deep pockets. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not calling out Steve Cohen when I say this. The plan put together is questionable. You're signing veterans who are 40 and north of 40 to be the guys to carry your rotation. Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, great talents. First ballot Hall of Famers, no doubt about it. However, in this day and age, and where they are right now, you cannot necessarily count on that. And look, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have signed these guys, but when you're paying them, I think, close to $86 million between the two of them, guys, I did it earlier this year. There's a Twitter post out there somewhere where I literally went down who you could buy off the Braves roster with $86 million. And this is at the time, but Olsen, Riley, Contreras, who was at the time, Murphy too right now, Fried, Soroka, if you want to throw him in there, Kyle Wright. Guys, you could buy a freaking team with $86 million right now. That's 2 pitchers. And they haven't exactly been great. Scherzer, who actually pitched very well last night, didn't even get the win. They didn't even win the ball game. And that's really, to me, the crux of the Mets problem. If you haven't heard about the Mets problem, it's out there. All you got to do is find a Mets fan. They'll tell you about it. Frank Fleming, Sal, if you guys remember Sal, the NL East is over guy. He went on a rant about it this morning. There are plenty of arguments out there. You're not going to hear it from me. I'm a Braves guy. But the reason I bring this to your attention, Braves fans out there, is this. The Braves aren't that. They don't operate like that. For all of you guys that are out there, we need the big-time deal. We need to go sign Trey Turner. We need to go sign Verlander. We need to go get DeGrom. I think you're starting to kind of see some of this. Trey Turner hasn't exactly been Trey Turner of old this year. DeGrom, Tommy John. Verlander hasn't really been himself this year. He got hit around pretty good tonight. And so did Strider. Those days happen. But when it's the majority of the appearances, when it's what you're counting on to make your team good, that's the problem. There isn't one guy that the Braves count on for the team to be good. And the reason I can back that up because I can, Ronald Acuna, 2 years ago, gets hurt, out for the season. Braves win the World Series. This year, Max Fried and Kyle Wright go down. Braves carry on. Still winning the division. Continue, I think, have a positive record since then. So they don't need one guy, two guys to really pull them through. They have plenty. I can't say that about the Mets. The Mets have a ton of talent. I'm not going to take that away from them. They have a great lineup. Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso. McNeil's one of my favorite players in the game. Honestly, if he wasn't a Met, I'd really like him. But they have good players. I like Starling Marte, if I'm honest with you. They have a lot of good players. The problem is they don't have depth. They don't have guys that you can count on past those star players. The Braves do. They do. And you have to give them credit. That doesn't start in free agency. That starts in the draft. That starts in your farm system. And I know the Braves farm system is nothing to be impressed with right now. But it will be, again. It was a few years ago. That's where all these guys came from. That's why we signed them to team-friendly deals. And the fact that we compete every year, that's not natural. It starts with the coaching, guys. A lot of you guys really like to get on Brian Snitker. But guys, success, the accolades, they mean something. And I think he got his 500 some odd win with the Braves tonight, third all time. So congrats to Snit. But no, guys, it starts from the top. The plan was put in. It was a 5-year plan. It took 5 years. The Braves are reaping the rewards of it. If it's me, if I'm another team out there who can compete financially with the Braves, if I'm doing better than the Braves, I'm looking at what the Braves are doing and I'm implementing that. The Dodgers have that covered. They have prospects every year, right? They do. But the Phillies don't. The Mets have a couple prospects here and there, but they're not built like the Braves were. If you remember, like 2017 when they all started coming up, Acuna, Albies. 2019, Riley comes up, right? Fried came up in that time. Soroka came up in that time. All these guys were coming up from the minors, and it fed the organization through the minors. That's how a team breeds success. It's rare that you see a team buy a victory, because if that was true, the Yankees would still be winning World Series every year. It doesn't work that way anymore. You can, but you will have to pay an exuberant amount of money, not to mention you'll go over the salary cap and have to pay those fines. It's just not necessarily feasible. You have to do it the right way. The Braves have done it the right way. And I'm not talking all night just to hate on the Mets. That's not what I'm doing. But what I am saying is all these Mets fans are out here. Sal today asked, hey, what's the problem with this team? Why do the Braves keep winning? That's why. It's that simple. It's really that simple. The Braves rebuilt. They did it the right way, and they're reaping the rewards for it. The Mets are pulling what the Phillies pulled a few years ago. Granted, the Phillies have been to a World Series since then. I told you then that I didn't think what the Phillies were doing was the right way to handle it. I still don't. The Phillies owner at the time said, we're going to spend, quote, stupid money. It was stupid. And I believe that's kind of what the Mets are doing. Steve Cohen brags about how much money he spends. He doesn't spend it in the right place. I'm telling you all this for free, by the way. He can learn it too very easily by looking at the Braves' example. Guys, the Braves don't spend money. Not a lot. They're paying Riley, what, $20 million a year? Compare that to any other third baseman comparable to Austin Riley. They're paying Acuna $10 million a year. Superstar player. Should arguably be on the cover of MLB The Show right now. Right? That's the eliteness of Ronald Acuna. But they have players like that all the time. They're paying Ozzie Albies $7 million a year. I think Ozzie Albies deserves a raise, honestly. But beyond that, there are so many players like that in the Braves organization that they're not paying a fortune, which means come trade deadline, come free agency, the Braves can explore other options if needed. Free agency, they have the money to spend, right? And trade deadline, they have prospects to send. Usually, we're kind of out right now, but you get my point. The Braves handle themselves the right way financially. And the real key word there is being responsible. It's the antithesis, that's a big word, I know. It's the antithesis of what the Phillies did a few years ago, right? You're doing it responsibly. And that's really what I think the key is. You can't go out here and just say, hey, we're going to go get Carlos Correa, and then that not work out. Thankfully for the Mets, that didn't work out because they would be paying even more money and arguably possibly having the same results. Now, I say all that to say it's working out pretty well for the Braves. That's pretty much the crux of my argument tonight. I know we have some super chats. I'm here to answer all your questions, so please don't leave. And again, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay up to date with everything going on here on deck, and of course with your Atlanta Braves, not to mention all across Major League Baseball. Guys, we're only a few subscribers away from 4,700. I think that's right, 4,700 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed already, it really would make my day if you would. Remember, super chats do get your priority. We're about to answer those one after the other here in just a second. Other than that, we are just going to be running through the comments as quickly as we can. And also, super chats do get you a bit of a longer answer typically, just because I feel like if you pay for an answer, I should give you a quality one. But no, we're going to get into that now. And starting out with, let me see. Johnny T, good to hear from you. He says, throw it again. Let's go Braves. I got a feeling, Jacob, we're going to have a bunch of throw it agains in the chat tonight. Yeah, that was, since you brought it up, I guess I'll give a full spiel on what I thought about it. I'll be honest with you, I didn't watch that game. I was aware of the game the entire time. I was keeping up with the scores and that kind of thing. I was actually working at the time. But I would be lying to you if I wasn't completely aware of Pete Alonso. Now, I do believe in today's game there is a place for let the kids play, right? I don't have a problem with the bat flips. I don't have a problem with celebrations. Orlando Arcia gave us a variety of celebrations in the past few days, shaking who knows what, okay? That's not the problem I have. The problem I do have with that was it was directed at someone, right? Like, you see stare downs, you see bat flips, you see that kind of thing. But when you verbally voice at the pitcher that you just homered off of, who is the National League ERA leader, who is also a young player, it just gives me a bad feeling, bad vibe. I don't like it. I think it's kind of Bush League. I'm not an MLB player. I probably shouldn't even be saying those words. But that's the feeling I got watching it. Now, I also wasn't there. I don't have the context. I don't know. I don't know. But I personally didn't like it. Now, am I advocating for him to get hit the next night? No. I did tweet about it because I was wondering what you guys would think about it, but I'm not advocating for anybody getting hit. However, I do believe in what goes around comes around. Going to leave that there. But, again, I'm not wishing anybody to be injured. I hope Pete Alonso comes back. He's a great player, great talent, and one of the star players for the Mets. I want the Braves to beat the Mets at full strength. I don't want them to beat them without Pete Alonso. But my point with that is I didn't love him going after Bryce Elder in that way. Bryce Elder might not have had an issue with it. I don't know. I saw his quote. He probably didn't have an issue with it, at least publicly. I did. I didn't like it. And look, honestly, this is coming from the team that had Ozuna taking selfies after every homer, okay? I love celebrations. I love Acuna doing the what is it, Jacob?
The Euro step?
The Euro step, there's something else he does. Anyway, I'm not hip with that, sorry. But there's a lot of celebrations that the Braves have, right? The Euro step, the Acuna, there's tons of them. But I think when you take it to that level, it gets a little bit too much. So thank you, Johnny T, for giving me the opportunity to say that. Really do appreciate it. Z Corp Alpha with a super chat tonight. A lot of super chats tonight. Really do appreciate that. Remember, super chats do get you in the front of the line for comments, and we always love talking to you about baseball. So thank you guys for tuning in. Really does make my day. And I always love doing this after big games because there's always, number one, a bigger audience. Number two, a lot more energy in the chat. So thank you guys for being here tonight. Z Corp says, team needs to regroup and rest. All-Star break. Greatest YouTube channel for the Atlanta Braves. Thank you. Please tell the Atlanta Braves that. Would really appreciate that. In terms of the team needing to regroup and rest in the All-Star break, let me see where we are in the season because I honestly don't even know how many Jacob,
62 games in.
62 games in-ish. When's the All-Star break? Do you know?
Around the 90s.
All right, so we're about 30 games away from the All-Star break. We got a little while before we can regroup. What I think they need to do is carry this momentum into the next few series. By the way, the unpaid intern over there, Jacob, is here ready to help me with any fact checks I might need. Anyway, going from there, really do appreciate Z Corp Alpha, big supporter of the channel. Thank you for the nice words. I really do thank you for that. Moving into the next super chat from none other than Z Corp Alpha. Thanks again. Appreciate it. So can you imagine if Atlanta signed Clayton Edward Kershaw at the All-Star break and trade deadline? Well, the possibility of that happening are, I would say, slim to none. I mean, to me, if there's a guy out there, and I said this earlier in the year, and a lot of you guys kind of shook your head at it, I don't think so. And it's because it's kind of the same situation. You got a guy who is at kind of the end of his career, could potentially want to be traded. Clayton Kershaw isn't the guy, though. That's because the Dodgers are still competitive, and I don't think that would be where they go. What I will say is there was a guy that I brought up earlier this year that I thought was not a real possibility, but a guy that if there was a veteran who was out there that could be potentially on the market, and I got to check how his team's doing before I drop his name because I might just take it right back because it's been a while since I've checked the standings. Yeah, okay. So the Cardinals are in last place. They're 8 games back. The guy that I brought up was Adam Wainwright. Since then, Wainwright's stats haven't necessarily improved. He is 2-1 on the year, but his ERA is almost 6. The guy doesn't need me to tell you how good he is. You know how good he is. 3-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glover, won the World Series in 2006. Silver Slugger, was originally drafted to the Braves. He could finish his career and be competitive in his final year. This is his final year. And he would help the Cardinals in a way where you could get prospects back for your time. You know, instead of losing that veteran, you could potentially do that. It's a possibility. I think it's slim to none. He'd be sacrificing the retirement tour. But if you're asking me, I don't think Adam Wainwright signed up for his final season to be 8 games back in the division in last place. So I'm just saying I wouldn't be overly surprised if that happened, but I also would be fairly surprised if it happened. We got our first ever super chat from Hato Mato. By the way, one of my favorite names in this entire chat ever. Was I right about A.J. Smith-Shawyer? I will be in Atlanta for the weekend, a fan of 37 years, and finally going to be in the house. Great show, as always. Hato Mato, if I don't know your real name, I apologize. If you've never been to the stadium, which it sounds like from this chat that's the case, you're in for a treat. The Truist Park, for any of you that have never been, you got to go. I've yet to go this year, but last year I went like 15 times, okay? I work a different schedule these days. It's a little harder for me to get out there. But I plan to be there at some point this year, more than likely more so in the second half of the season, get a little bit more postseason feel as time goes on. But either way, you're in for a treat. I hope you get to see A.J. Smith-Shawyer pitch. The guy's great. He looked phenomenal in the pen the other day. They're bringing him out for a start is what the rumor is, at least probable. That's kind of where we're at. He pitched well in the minors. Don't know how he's going to be going, into a start. It's a little different. But I'm willing to see, I'm willing to give him a chance. It's not like anybody else has really proven to be consistent. Because as much as I like Soroka, as much as we're hoping for Soroka, as much as we talked about Soroka, there was, questions. And those questions weren't necessarily answered. He's healthy, we know that, but he's not necessarily what he used to be. He's not necessarily super ready to go, I don't think. I think a couple more starts in AAA, they can give him that. But the other thing I'd mention is in AAA, they can leave him in to figure it out. In the majors, it's more, when pressure's put on, you have to ask yourself, do we let this get out of hand, or do we take him out now and put in a reliever and go from there? Because these games are important. We're only 3.5 games up, and I think that's kind of the dilemma that Brian Snitker found himself in, Alex Anthopoulos found himself in, even Michael Soroka found himself in. We're all rooting for Michael Soroka, but I think there's going to be some more time before he's ready to go. Of course, if you missed it, he was optioned to AAA, so I think that's probably the best place for him. If he's being optioned, it's not because the Braves don't love him. They do. They want him to be successful, and I think his best route for success at the moment is in AAA. Let me see. I think we have one more super chat. Wow, really, really doing well with super chats tonight. Thank you, guys. That's the best way to support the channel. Thank you very much for the super chats. Remember, they do put you in the front of the line. That's why I'm answering these questions first. We got a lot of them tonight, so thank you again. Z Corp Alpha, team needs to win playoffs. Season means Zippo. I personally want another ring. Look, I got a couple of them on the shelf too. I would like another one to display myself. We would love to see it. I think they're on a good path to get there. Obviously, leading the division at this time of the year is a lot better than where we were last year, and that's really what matters. But there's a lot of time to go. You have a long season. We mentioned earlier there's 62 games-ish played so far. You got another 100. You know, you're a little over a third of the way through. So you got a long time before you could really start saying, oh, we're going to win the World Series. Not quite. You know, you kind of have to rein that in. We're a very good team. I don't know what we're on pace, how many wins we're on pace to get. I haven't done that lately. I can try to do the math if you want to try to do the math. I'm not going to do it on camera for you and take my time doing it. But if unpaid intern over there wants to do it, we can figure it out.
38th win tonight.
I think so. Look it up. Anyway, we'll figure that out for you. I'll get back to you. But either way, no matter what we're on pace for, there's still a very long season ahead. And the reason I say that is last year, the Mets are 8.5 games back. We were 10.5 games back. Just consider that. It's not over. So it's a long ways to go. What?
My math says we're going to win 99 games.
Right now, we're on pace for 99.
I think.
Don't buy into that. We think.
I don't even know if that's right. but-
Okay. We think. We're on pace for right around 100 games. We'll just say that. Either way, long season to go. We'll see what happens. But don't buy into, oh, we got all these wins. We're in first place. Don't buy into that. Long time to go. We still got to get Fried back. Still got to get Kyle Wright back. Still got to last to the All-Star break, which is another 30 games-ish without him. So, long ways to go. We'll see how it goes. That's all we can really say. For now, we're going to get into the comment section. The non-super chatters, we're going to get into what you guys want to talk about. A lot of you guys tuning in tonight. Chris Kaysen with the broomsticks, rightfully so. Corey Carter says, it sure felt like that wasn't going to be our night. I don't know, Corey. I felt it the whole night. I felt it from the moment Austin Riley hit the 3-run homer and the Mets responded. It's like, this is too early. The Braves are going to come back. And then what really sold it for me, honestly, the moment I knew they were coming back, and this is going to sound crazy, but it was in the top of the 8th when Joe Jimenez had gone 2 innings scoreless, because that gave the Braves an opportunity to respond. They did. It was a 2-run homer by d'Arnaud, which made it 10-9. When it was 10-9, I was like, oh, we got a shot. Then Orlando comes up, bottom of the 9th, ties it up. I knew right then the Braves were winning the game. And if you don't believe me, there's this little handy-dandy thing down here. And look, I don't know math all that great, but I'm going to try to explain it. It's called win probability, okay? See this little graph right here? It went from 86.9% in the Mets' favor to 59.8% to the Braves' favor. Now, if you don't know what that means, it means it went like this. Okay, that's what it means. In the Braves' favor away from the Mets. And that one swing did it. So I knew right then Braves are winning the game. They got the momentum. They got last at bat. They're winning the game. No way they don't win the game. And then Ozzie Albies did it for us. So that's all we can really ask for. So for me, I felt it all night. But, you know, there's a reason we watch this games. It's because we don't count the Braves out, right? They always got a chance to win, and they proved it tonight. Always love a good comeback. There's comebacks I remember. There's comebacks that, you know, you can't really ever forget. Me and him were talking about one earlier. Brian McCann walking off in 2019. It was like an 8-run comeback. We were there for it. You know, you never forget those. I remember in 2021, there was one where Contreras scored. I don't remember who had the walk-off hit. I remember the Max Fried walk-off. A-Ray hit it. Okay, whatever. Max Fried walk-off. There's so many of them. Austin Riley's walk-off in the postseason against the Dodgers. We were there for that one too. There's been so many of them, okay? And you never really forget them. I think this is going to be one at the end of the season we're going to point to, we're going to circle, and we're going to say that's when we put the Mets down. Not saying it's over, but I think that's going to be a fundamental moment in this, because we came back, guys, 13-10. I mean, how often do we even see a score that has 10 runs total? This was a good win. And considering they rock Strider, I think that's huge. I mean, does anybody even remember Nemo's grand slam that happened in the second inning? I mean, like, that's a moot point, right? So take that into consideration. I think it was a great win. I think we'll look back on it smile. Richard Davis brings up a good point. He says it backfired on Snit by skipping Schuster's turn in the rotation tonight and pitching Strider, but they did win anyway. Yeah, I can see that, but I also would say with an extra day's rest going to Strider there, for me, I get you're skipping Schuster, but you're skipping the guy with inexperience to face a division rival, get the sweep. I don't mind it. And not to mention where you're going from here. You're hosting the Nationals. I'd much rather Schuster pitch that game. At least, obviously with hindsight, you can say it backfired. But going into that, I don't mind the decision. Because I'm like, I want my best guy that I got. And right now, our best guy, you can make an argument for Morton, but our best guy with talent right now is Strider. I know there was some concern I saw out there about his fastball sitting at 94. Whatever they do. I mean, 94 is still a pretty good fastball. But my point is, going from here, you have Schuster tomorrow night against the Nationals. I still feel pretty good about that. I feel much better about that than Schuster against the Mets. Schuster's been good, but I want to give him the best chance to win. I want to give the team the best chance to win. And I think the best chance to win against the Mets on paper going into that game was Strider. Obviously didn't work out, but, we'll see. Let's see. Corey Carter says he's predicting 5 All-Stars. Sean Murphy, Bryce Elder, Ronald Acuna, Riley, and the ageless Jesse Chavez. That's pretty funny. I'll give you at least 4 of those. I don't know about Jesse Chavez. Acuna, I think, is obvious. Riley, I think it's going to be tough. Everybody's going to point out Arenado. I don't know how good of a year Arenado happens to be having this year, but that's the one that always seems to get in the way. Sean Murphy's a legit case, and Bryce Elder, I think, is a legit case. I think it's going to be tougher on a pitcher because there's so many. He was the National League ERA leader for majority of the season so far, or at least from the time he's been up. I don't know where that stands now. I haven't looked at it after, a couple weeks ago. But I think Elder's been great. I think you could make an argument for Strider, possibly. I don't know the stats. Again, I don't go through these guys' stats every day. I don't follow them day to day. I can just kind of tell you what I'm seeing on the games themselves, really. What I do know is that I think Acuna is a legit case. I think Sean Murphy is a legit case. Riley has a legit case, and I think Elder does too. In terms of Chavez, he's, look, the guy's great. I love him, but it would be a tough sell, I think, to get him in the All-Star game, unless you got him in as a fan favorite, which I think, again, would be tough. Pujols gets that nod. Yadier Molina gets that nod. I don't know that Jesse Chavez gets that nod. Let's see. Vision says, gotta find time to watch the recording. Good, got to see the booth. I know it was great. I mean, look, anytime you have John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, Chipper Jones, and Jeff Francoeur in the same space, you're going to have laughs, you're going to have insight, and you're going to have a lot of fun. I would encourage you to go watch it back. There was a lot of good moments. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but Smoltz started off the broadcast with a wig. I feel like that's all you need to know to be encouraged to go watch it. So, yeah, definitely watch the recording. On the Go with CeeLo tunes in. That's a channel you guys ought to check out if you hadn't already. Shouted me out tonight. Appreciate that. He says, 6 straight losses for the Mets. Boom. We love that. He also says that strikeout Uncle Jesse got was huge too. Uncle Jesse from Full House. I'm just kidding. Jesse Chavez. Yeah, that was a huge strikeout. Very timely strikeout. Of course, he ran into some trouble in the ninth. Had some runners on, but that was a huge one. Derek Smith says what I said earlier. Kind of recalibrates and says what I said earlier. Another trip to Arizona turns the season around. What a game. Well, let's not go that far, but so far it's been a good little pick-me-up, right? Bill Gates. I can't say your full name, Bill Gates, and there's a reason for that. You know that, but I will say Bill Gates. He says, Ozuna, donde está Ozuna? He's with the Braves, still hitting homers, and the haters can shove it. All right, I'm with you. And I'm glad you brought up Ozuna, because we have talked extensively about Marcell Ozuna, good and bad, okay? I think we all are aware of who Ozuna is, the reason there's good and bad, I get all that. But I have some good to talk about Ozuna. And it's not even the homer he hit tonight. I don't care about that. I do care about that, but not really. And there's a reason. If you missed it, Marcell Ozuna was the one who talked to Michael Harris and got him out of this funk, at least here recently. He's been hitting the ball better. I think he had 2 home runs yesterday. He's been doing pretty well. Go look it up if you've missed it, because you can see an interview with Marcell talking about that interaction. And you always heard about Marcell Ozuna being a really good teammate. You always heard about him being a clubhouse leader. You always hear about it, but you can never put a face to it. You can never get eyes on it, right? You can hear it. It's like, okay, whatever. They're looking for good PR, right? That's all you can really get with that. When you hear it from Joe Simpson or Ben Ingram or, Peter Moreland, whatever, you can't really get it. But when you hear Michael Harris, who struggled all year due to primarily injury, when you hear him say, I've really been struggling mentally, physically, I've been struggling all the way around. When you hear him say, Marcell Ozuna came up to me, talked to me, and told me, number one, I'm the best center fielder in the league and possibly the game, and I gotta hold my head up high and act like it and play like it. When you hear that, and then you see the results, you have to agree with it. I don't know where else you go from there. So credit to Marcell Ozuna, number one, on hitting the homer tonight. We'll give him that. But also for being a quality teammate, because that's not what you're going to hear on the headlines. You're not going to hear that. So you may see a couple, but that's the kind of thing that is not going to get the attention. And as much bad publicity has been out there over the past couple of years, that should get the attention. So credit to Marcell Ozuna. Bill Gates, thank you for letting me talk about that. Really do appreciate it. Dougie says the series might have been the one I've ever watched. 3 gritty wins in a row. Yeah, it was a good one. I would encourage you to go watch the last series between the Braves and the Mets last year, because it's hard to top that one. The Mets needed 1 win, and they win the division. They couldn't even get that. So that, to me, is the greatest series between these two teams that I've watched and been focused on and knew what was going on, knew the context, because the context is everything. The reason this series was so good, if it was any other team, it wouldn't matter. Not as much as this. This is the Mets. This is the Braves and the Mets. That's why it's good. Last year, you have the context of the winner wins the division. So, just telling you, it makes it a little better. We got another super chat from Vision. Says, surprised so many people around me left the game tonight. I felt like there was going to be a comeback too. Also love what Harris shared about Ozuna. Again, Vision, I've told you before, never count the Braves out. And I think to this point, I think tonight showed it. You're always going to have who my good buddy Josh Pate would call the casuals. You're always going to have those. The guys that aren't educated. I'm not going to say aren't educated, but they're not following the Braves like me and you are. They're not staying up to date day to day. They don't know how much fight is in this team. And when you have that, you're not just going to leave the game. Now, if they're down by 14, you got to beat traffic. I understand. I never felt like they were out of it tonight. Never did. Never turned TV off. Never walked away from it. We were engaged the entire time. And it paid off. We got to see the walk-off. And you got to see it in person, so credit to you. Thanks for tuning in. How about Vision, everybody? Goes to the game, still makes it into On Deck. You love to see that. We're going to tune back up. Thanks again for the Super Chat. Remember, Super Chats do get your priority in terms of when you get talked to, when I read your chat. So make sure you do Super Chat if you want to get your question asked sooner rather than later. But aside from that, guys, I do want to remind you to please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can be updated when we go live. I saw somebody ask me earlier, do I live stream every game? No, I simply can't. I work most nights. I happen to be off tonight, so it worked out. It worked out really in a timely way because I was off for a walk-off. You can't beat that, right? So really worked out well for me tonight, but we don't live stream every game. I wish we could. We used to. if I'm honest with you. But it's just too difficult for us these days. But we do live stream at least once a week. We get on here and talk. For perspective, guys, I'm exhausted right now. I'm not even going to lie to you. I was in Nashville this morning, so just putting that out there. But I wanted to live stream because this was a huge win for the Braves, right? So we do this, again, as much as possible. So please do support the channel. And if you're a Braves fan, this is where you need to be. So really do thank you for tuning in. Let's go ahead and jump in with I am Ken Ross. Well, hello, Ken Ross. He says, if it's still like this after the All-Star break, it might as well be over, though. I'm just not confident saying that. And the reason is we have a lot to navigate. You still got to navigate a few weeks without Max Fried and Kyle Wright, which the Braves have been able to do, but it's still without Max Fried and Kyle Wright. You still have to manage, an offense that has been good but gets cold. You still have games to play, is essentially what I'm saying. And in terms of the second half, yeah, but the Mets could also come back. They have the talent to do so. The Marlins are not somebody you want to just overlook. They're only 3.5 games back. Who's that guy, Jacob? The guy, 400? Who's he? What's his name? It escaped my mind. The guy for the Marlins hitting 400.
Luis Arias.
Luis Arias. They got a guy hitting 400 right now, guys. They're not something to slouch at. And it's funny because I've been telling you guys for years, and this isn't a slight to you. I'm just saying that I have said this for a very long time. The Marlins are on the come up, okay? They have been on the come up for a few years. They're a couple years behind the Braves, okay? They're not far. They have talent. They have pitching. And if you have pitching, you have something. And I really think that they're on a path upwards. And if you disagree with me, fine. But I'm telling you, they're in second place in the division, 3.5 games back for a reason. If it wasn't for the Marlins, the Braves would be in very good shape in the NL East. They're making a push. And do not overlook the Miami Marlins, which sounds foreign. It sounds like you shouldn't even worry about the Marlins because for so long they have been the afterthought. They have been the Washington Nationals. They're not. This is not the Marlins of old. This is the Atlanta Braves of 2018 possibly that we're talking about here. Now granted that team won the division. We hope that doesn't happen, but that's the level that they're at. They're at the point where they could compete for the postseason and in the postseason. And a lot of people are going to shake their head at that. They're going to be, oh, no. Number one, the postseason has expanded. Number two, it wasn't that long ago that the Marlins were in the postseason. 2020, anybody? They were there. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were in the postseason, playing the Cubs in the first round. They were there. They made it. So if you think this team can't make it, they've gotten better. And they're under different management. Not saying that Don Mattingly was the problem, he wasn't. But Jacob shaking his head too. He was not the problem. But they are a good team. They have more talent. They have young talent. And they're only going to get better. This is the team that I think is built the right way within the NL East other than the Braves. They've built from within, right? The Mets, go out and get all these free agents. Phillies, same thing. The Washington Nationals, who knows what they could turn into. They wanted to buy it all for Juan Soto a couple years ago. You remember that? They wanted to pay him $500 million. Didn't happen. So that's my point here. The Marlins are a very good team and have the potential to be every bit as good as anyone else. So just telling you that now. Let's see. Mike Popcorn Porter. That's quite the name. He says the Braves are much, much, much better than the Mets today. They're much, much, much better than the Mets today. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, Tyler, we're 5-1 against the Mets this year. Sure. But I want to remind you where we were last year at this time. Not that great. I don't know how many games back we were on June 9th, 2022. I don't know how many games back, but we were back. And we were on the path to getting to 10.5 games back. That's the furthest we ever got. Mets aren't there yet. So until they get to 20 games back, they're still in the conversation. And guys, we keep talking about the Mets. I know we played the Mets today. The Marlins are in second place. They're the guys that are chasing us. They have 5 games on the Mets. The Mets are not even in third. I mentioned that earlier, but I'm going to mention it again. The Mets are not even in third. The only team that the Mets right now, according to their record, are better than is the Washington Nationals. Now, they could have a great second half. They could get rejuvenated at the All-Star break. They could do all kinds of things. Who knows? Pete Alonso might even win himself another home run derby. Who knows what will happen come the All-Star break and after the All-Star break. But right now, the Mets are in fourth. You have 2 teams that you got to worry about before you even consider the Mets. As of right now, later on might be a different story. The Marlins and then the Phillies. The Phillies are 8 games back. The Marlins are the only team that are competing with us right now. Legitimately competing. The other teams are in the division. They still have a chance. But the ones that are getting us shot for shot, staying on pace with us day after day, is the Miami Marlins. And that's what I want you guys to realize. Elijah Smith says, I love seeing Mets fans' tears. You really ought to go check out Frank Fleming because he just dropped a gem. I can't play it here. It's not family appropriate, but it's a gem. His shirt, by the way, I have to mention it, right?
Yeah, you do.
The only thing that is still on the front of his shirt is the neck hole, okay? The rest of it has Superman style ripped open, okay? Elijah, just trust me. Okay, that's all I can say about it. Let's see. Joe Mixon says what I said earlier. $353 million payout for that. Moneyball means something, guys. It doesn't mean spend more money. Let's see. We got a lot of you guys. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to the bottom because I think I'm like well behind. Jack Patterson. Thank you, Jack. Look at Jack Patterson coming in the chat. By the way, that's my boss, so be respectful. Jack Patterson says that the Braves were 6.5 games back on June 9th last season, 10.5 back June 1st. Thank you for the record checking, Jack. Appreciate that. So the Braves were 6.5 game back. Jacob was on it too. Braves are 6.5 games back on June 9th. The reason that is important is the Mets are already 8.5 game back. That could shift. That could change day to day. Braves seem to be going in an easier route. I don't know where the Mets are going from here, but it's not necessarily impossible for them to come back from this. They have more time to come back from this than the Braves did having back from 10.5. So, wait a second. I stand corrected. The Braves were 10.5 game back 8 days ago, a year ago. So they had already started coming back. They had already gotten 3 games back. So I do stand 4 games back. So I do stand corrected. Thank you, Jack. So look, but either way, you still have another 100 games to go. The Mets have plenty of time to come back if they can, right? So I don't want to say that it's over because I don't want to be the guy clipped by the Mets fans out there for years to come like Sal was. I don't want that because it's not over. You won't hear me say that. There's a long time to go, but we'll see. Georgia Bulldogs for life, #1, says, what's up, Tyler? Watching Mets fans crying about losing. That's a good hobby to have. I don't knock it. Preston Young says, I find it crazy we're paying Arcia $2.1 million and he's better than Lindor, who's at $34.1. Crazy deal by AA. Pause that. I'm not gonna say that Arcia is better than Lindor. I'm just not gonna say it. I'm not looking at the stats. I'm saying this completely blind, okay? I don't know where the stats are right now. Lindor is a phenomenal talent, okay? The point is, we don't need a Lindor there. We don't need a $34 million shortstop when we have Olsen at first, Riley at third, Albies at second, a phenomenal pitching staff who has held their ground without Max Fried and Kyle Wright. The outfield is phenomenal. You have bats left and right. You don't need to pay another bat at shortstop. Not when you're surrounded by Acuna, Albies, Olsen, Riley, Sean Murphy, Darno. Who else? Ozuna. You don't need to get another bat there. It was great when you had Dansby. Dansby had a great year last year. The point is you don't have to pay that. You just don't. AA recognized that, saw what Orlando Arcia is doing, realized, hey, you know what? Vaughn Grissom may come around, but if he doesn't, I want that guy for the next 3 years because I can get him for $7 million, not take near as big of a risk, not to mention pending injury. What if we got Lindor and he had the same injury Arcia had? How would you have felt then? Been out for a month, how would you feel? Because I know for me, it's like, oh man, we just paid this guy $34 million and now he's hurt for a month. He's hurt for 2 months. Right? Even when Acuna got hurt, we were paying him $10 million a year. That didn't feel near as bad as if we had just lost somebody who we couldn't afford to lose. Not to say that we could, but we could at the time because of what we were paying him. Smart deals make sense. And that's where the Mets have the problem. It's not the talent they have. They have the talent. They don't have enough talent to surround it because they're too busy paying these big guys. Pete Alonso, I don't even know how much he's making. Francisco Lindor. Pete Alonso's probably not making that much. I think he's still on his rookie deal, so he's probably not making a ton. But Francisco Lindor got that big paycheck. Don't even get me started on the pitchers. I don't even want to go down that road. I already went down it once. But that's my point, is there's a way to do things. Me personally, my personal belief is that the way Alex Anthopoulos runs his show is the best way. I have yet to see a better one. With his resources, with his ability, that merges well. Now, you can say, like, hey, okay, Jacob, I appreciate that. You can say that you can say that these big teams, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the way they do it's better because they have more championships. When was the last time the Yankees won a World Series? 2009. So it's been 15 years? 14 years? Almost 15? I mean, that you're talking about a teenager was born that year. So the Dodgers, 80s?
2020.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry, the COVID year. I apologize. That year just floats out of my mind. But the Dodgers, they do it. There's a merger there. They do it the right way. They have the free agents, but they also have the prospects. That program, I think, is actually run very well. The Yankees, to me, they still they have some great individuals, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. They have some guys, but they don't have a lot to build off of. The Angels have the same problem. By the way, who knows if they're going to get Shohei Ohtani back? They have Trout for life, but who knows, So you have to know how to use your talent in the right way. And right now, I think the Braves, in my humble opinion, handle it the best throughout baseball. The way Alex Anthopoulos runs it, there is no better way. That's my opinion. Might be genius. Well, if you might be genius, let's see what you got to say. He says Anthopoulos has been the best GM we've ever had in Atlanta in any sport. That's a hot take. I would throw one more your way, and that would be the architect, John Shearholtz. The guy's in a Hall of Fame. He's got to be pretty good. And Anthopoulos might be on his way. Who knows? But Shearholtz pretty much built the modern Braves. Okay, so I do want... I don't know how old, but I do want you to just throw him into that mix because you're talking about the guy who turned them from being the lovable losers, 80s Braves, all due respect to Glenn Hubbard, Dale Murphy, anybody else from that period, but that's who they were. They were on TBS, they lost, that's who they were. The 90s comes along. You start getting these prospects named John Smoltz, Tom Glavine, and then you sign Greg Maddux. You go from worst to first all of a sudden. That doesn't just happen. That starts up top with John Shearholtz and Bobby Cox. So, yeah, Alex Anthopoulos is definitely in the conversation, but I wouldn't just look over John Shearholtz. Rod says the Braves are doing what the Dodgers have been doing, loading up and pitching prospects. Well, no, the Braves have been doing that a long time, a very long time. They've done it since the 90s. Again, I just rolled off a few names, and John Smoltz, Tom Glavine. Don't forget about Steve Avery. Those are all homegrown talent for the most part. We got Smoltz in a trade during the minors from Detroit, but those were all homegrown products for the most part. When they hit the major leagues, they spent time in the minors with Braves. The only one of the big three, really the big five, was Maddux that came from another team. We signed him, and he turned down a deal with the Yankees, by the way. Took less money, came to Atlanta. That tells you how special Atlanta was at the time. The reason I say that is they've always loaded up on pitching prospects because Steve Avery gets forgotten all the time. Best pickoff move ever, by the way. Anyway, there's a lot of pitching prospects then, a lot of pitching prospects now, and then they were able to surround themselves. Don't forget about Wohlers. There was a lot of guys within that organization that made that team work. And don't forget about, guys, the way you win championships year after year after year is with pitching. You don't do it with offense. Offense can slump. Two things that never slump. This is from Ron Washington himself. The two things that never slump, pitching and defense. That's why Michael Harris is still valuable even if he's not hitting. But pitching, that's the number one thing. The reason the Braves won 14 straight division titles is because they had pitching. Year after year, they had pitching. That's how you win year after year. So my point with that is the Braves have always done it. They did it all throughout the early 2000s. Don't forget Craig Kimbrell was Rookie of the Year with the Braves. That's a pitching prospect you probably forget about. But they came up then. Johnny Venters, not all of them are going to make it to the Hall of Fame. but a lot of them were good when they were there. Johnny Venters, Craig Kimbrell, Tommy Hanson, I'll throw out. I mean, there was a lot of those guys that, again, only had a little short stint. Johnny Venters came back from 3.5 Tommy Johns. The guy was around a long time and even had a resurgence with the Braves back in 2019. There was a ton of those guys. The early part of this rebuild, you had Fulte, you had Newcomb, you had Soroka, Fried. Guys, Tookie Toussaint, Kyle Wright, even Colby Allard. I mean, you had a ton of these guys who may not have turned into much, but at the time that we were loaded on pitching prospects, and we lost a lot of them to trades because we could. We had that wealth. That's what we don't have right now. So, we'll see what happens. But long history of the Braves building on pitching prospects because that's really where the value is. The fact that we're paying our pitchers what we're paying them right now is wild. Because you look across the league, some of these guys are making big bucks. And, look at, again, Scherzer, Verlander, $42 million a year each. Just going to leave you with that. All right. Preston Young, who do you think Shohei ends up with? L.A., San Diego, or New York? What's funny is I don't know what L.A. you're talking about. And what if he ends up with the Angels again? I'm just kidding. I don't think that's going to happen. It's difficult because if I'm the Angels, do I trade him or do I keep him? Because there's a debate right now. I saw a podcast the other day. I think it was with AJ Przinsky. I think it was that podcast. They were talking about this because the argument is trade him because of what you can get back. You can get all kinds of prospect capital back. You can get a ton back for Shohei Ohtani for the rest of this season. And for the Angels, who are they even competing right now? I don't even know. I should, but I don't. Let me see. American League. The Angels, who are in third place, 8 games back, though, so could be a wild card maybe. But they could give up on it and get a ton back for Shohei Ohtani. Or you can try to make a deal with him before he hits free agency, or you can try to sign him in free agency. But the real problem with it is you're selling out that stadium every time he pitches. That's the real thing. And I know money should not be a factor, but it is in this game. And if you're selling out the stadium every time he pitches, if you're selling his jersey, if you're making money off of him, you're going to want to keep him around. It's tough to let him go. It's rare that you have someone who's so beloved by all of baseball. Usually, one fan base is going to surround that guy, and it's going to be whatever fan base he's with currently. How many Freeman jerseys have the Braves sold since he left? You see my point? So it's very rare. There's a few players that do that. Not even Chipper Jones did that. Mets fans hated him, right? But everybody is aware of what Shohei Ohtani is doing. Everyone is impressed with it, and everyone is kind of rooting for him to keep doing it because he's an anomaly. It's rare that you see that. So he's special. He brings in a whole new audience. People will travel to see him. And you lose Shohei Ohtani, you lose that factor. And that's really what's keeping the Angels somewhat in it. But you have 2 of the best players, I think, in baseball history right now on the Angels. Mike Trout, who's undoubtedly one of the greatest players ever. If he's the greatest player of my generation, of my childhood at least. And Shohei Ohtani, who again, there's never been anyone like him. And people will say Babe Ruth. No. There's never been anyone like him. Not who's pitching and hitting dingers on the same day. Not doing that. Not to mention pitching fairly well and hitting at an exorbitant rate against, let's be honest, we're 100 some odd years apart from Babe Ruth. Pitching has gotten a little better. So, reason I say that, there's never been anyone like him. So, it'll be interesting what the Angels do. In terms of where I think he'll go, and that's really the crux of your question here, it's tough because you're going to have to find a team that's going to merge well with Shohei Ohtani. Reason I say that, the Braves would not be a fit for Shohei Ohtani. They're not going to let him pitch and hit, I don't think. Would they be dumb not to? Maybe. But it's just not who they are. I don't know where you even put him. He's not going to be in the outfield, is he? Potentially, but I don't think the Braves are going to spend that kind of deal. They're not necessarily going to want him in the rotation. They don't want to risk injury. Think about when the Braves had Deion Sanders, right? And I know it's been a few years, but that's their identity. They don't like change. They're a traditional club. Now, here lately, they've been doing the let the kids play, bat flips, But at the heart of the Braves, they are a traditional club. I don't think Shohei fits that bill. I just don't. People bring it up all the time in these chats. I don't believe that's fit. In terms of where I think he'll go, you have a few clubs that I think could do it. It's all going to be about who wants to spend the money. The Mets are a legit candidate because that guy never stopped spending money. Okay, the New York Yankees are a legit candidate. The LA Dodgers are a legit candidate. They are. They have the money to do it. Do I think they'll get him? No, but they will be in the bidding. I do think that. One team that I'll throw out there with you that I think no one's talking about in terms of Shohei Ohtani. I want to mention the Padres, but that's not who I'm talking about going in a second. The Padres are definitely going to be in it because they spend money similar to the teams I just mentioned. The team that no one's talking about with Shohei Ohtani is the St. Louis Cardinals. You might be going, well, Tyler, they're not going to do that. They wouldn't. Just think about it. Think about it. They lost Albert Pujols last year. They lost Yadier Molina last year. And they also lost, or will lose, Adam Wainwright at the end of the season. Or before, but more likely at the end of the season. Reason I say that, they're going to want something in the free agent market. They may have their eye on Shohei Ohtani. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying keep your eye on the St. Louis Cardinals. Just an interesting thought. Just a thought. They got to have something to kind of pick them up, and a two-way player like that very well could be it. That would be what I tell you. I'm not saying where I think he'll go. I'll tell you who I think are candidates because I can predict that he'll go to the Yankees and he'll go to the freaking Dodgers or something like that, right? So it's tough to predict, especially in those kind of conversations. You never know how they're going to go. Who do I think will be the highest bidder? Whoever's got the deepest pockets. Who is it? Is it the Cardinals? Is it the St. Louis Padres? San Diego Padres? New York Yankees? New York Mets? Who is it? Do I think he'll take the highest bidder? Who knows? So that's why it's so difficult, because I can tell you who I think would be the highest bidder. I think it's the guy with the deepest pockets, and that's Steve Cohen of the Mets. But he's also got a lot of money tied up elsewhere, and it hasn't led to a lot of success. So he may be hesitant. Do I think he'll make the highest bid? Possibly. Could be the Yankees. But I don't think Shohei Ohtani will necessarily take the highest bid. I think he might take somewhere where he fits in well. And that's another reason why I brought up the Cardinals. So we'll see. Not to mention he'd have a really good catcher in William Contreras. Even though there's big complaints this year, I get all that. I'm not buying it. The dude's a good catcher. Anyway, Rudd Johnson. Smart move by the Braves because they could develop pitching. Preston Young. Crazy to think that the Braves are this good without any international free agents since 2016. We draft unbelievably well. By the way, speaking of that, glad you brought that up. If you don't know anything about our draft picks, I have a pretty good way for you to meet them. We have interviews with them all over the channel. Owen Murphy, J.R. Ritchie, my buddy Cole Phillips. All three of those guys we have interviews with on the channel. I have multiple with Cole Phillips. Great guys, great arms. They're all three pitchers. You really ought to go check them out. All two first-round draft picks with J.R. Ritchie and Owen Murphy, and a second-round draft pick with Cole Phillips. I think all three of them have bright futures in the game, one way or the other. And, there's someone to root for, and you'll root for them if you watch those interviews. So go check them out. They are on the channel. If you can't find them, just go to my playlist, Get to Know Them. You'll find them there, along with a multitude of other interviews that I've done over the years, ranging as far back as Dansby Swanson as a rookie year. So they got plenty of them. Go check them out. If you're a Braves fan, there's plenty. If you're just a baseball fan, go check them out. We got interviews with not just Braves, but Denny McLain of the Detroit Tigers, 1968 Cy Young Award winner. Who else we got from other teams? Darryl Strawberry's out there. We got plenty. Go check out that playlist. If you're a baseball fan, you'd really like it. We do have a super chat. We're gonna wrap this up here in a minute, considering it is almost 1 in the morning. We are going to wrap this up probably around that time, so get your questions in. I will answer as many of them as I can, but we're going to wrap it up right at 1. So we've been going for a long time. Don't plan to go much longer, so please get your questions in. And remember, Super Chats do get priority. At 1 o'clock, we're cutting it off, so make sure to get it in. On the go with CeeLo says Snit has to give D-Train, a.k.a. Travis d'Arnaud, more at-bats. You got to see Frank the Tank's reaction at the bottom of the 10th. It's classic. Go Braves. It's funny you say that. Me and Jacob were talking earlier about a specific Frank the Tank reaction from a few years ago. He went looking for it. He couldn't find it. What was the date, Jacob?
July 31st, 2020.
July 31st, 2020, COVID season. There was a specific reaction by Frank the Tank where Travis d'Arnaud had a really good game. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. I don't remember the exact stat line, but he had a few RBIs. We'll just say that. Frank the Tank, being the Mets fan that he is, recalled Travis d'Arnaud's Mets tenure. And I quote, "When he was with the Mets, he was terrible. He goes to the Braves, and he has the game of his bleep life." Okay? If you don't follow Frank the Tank and you're a Braves fans, you are missing out. Thank you for that. I will be sure to check it out. I can't wait. And we're going to have to go back and find that original because I can only imagine if it was that bad then, it can't be much worse. It can't be much better 3 years later. Can't wait. Frank the Tank, though, if you don't know who he is, he's with Barstool Sports. I've been following him since he was just a YouTuber like us. And we have laughed at him and with him for years. And I appreciate the entertainment he provides. And by the way, I will also say that I've talked to a couple of the Braves players about Frank the Tank, not on camera. And I don't know that I should tell you who it is, but I will because I don't think he'd care. Tyler Matzik. We talked to Tyler Matzik off camera right after I interviewed him. By the way, y'all saw that clip earlier about Frank the Tank. And he immediately smiled, turned red, and said, yes, they do watch it. And this is last year. So this is, of course, the Mets are leading, and Frank the Tank the entire time is going, they don't have a big enough lead. They don't have a big enough lead. The Braves are going to come back. They're going to win the division. You know, that's what his identity became, right? He really got popular because of that. And Matzik was saying that the Braves watch it every day after the game. They're just waiting on the upload. They're just sitting there waiting on the upload. So it's worth a watch. If Braves players are watching it, you need to be watching it. Let's see. Austin Nocho says, random question, but why has Ozzie just stopped stealing bases? That's a fair question. Usually when I get an Ozzie question is, why does he keep hitting from the left side? Well, tonight he hit a walk-off homer from the left side. Just point that out for all you haters. Anyway, do I think he should stop switch hitting? Possibly. I'm not really sold on it, though. That's not even the question you asked me, but I feel like I needed to address it before it got asked. Why has Ozzie just stopped stealing bases? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I wish I did. Maybe he doesn't feel confident. Maybe the catchers are good. If you have a Sean Murphy behind home plate, I wouldn't steal either. So it just depends. We'll see. Derek Smith says, Ohtani to the Orioles is my way left field guess. Yeah, that's a way left field guess. I don't know if they have the money to spend on it. The Orioles have been a perennial bad team over the past few years. They're very good now, but let's be real. For the past few years, it's been rough. Reason I say that is because simply I don't know that they got the revenue to spend because they haven't had the attendance. I could be wrong. I honestly would love to see him go to the Orioles just to give Baltimore something. And they have a lot to look forward to. I mean, honestly, with Adley and the Gunnar Henderson, a couple of prospects they got, they have a lot to look forward to. But Shohei would be a big boost. So, yeah, that would be great. Guys, do want to remind you to go check out the On Deck shop. We got plenty there for you guys to go check out. Stickers, hoodies, T-shirts, all kinds of stuff for you to go check out. The link is down below. The QR code is about to pop up on your screen in just a second. And, of course, it's also at the bottom left at all times. Remember, go shop On Deck. We got everything with an On Deck logo on it that you could possibly ask for. We have hats, hoodies, banners, pennants, water bottles, whatever you need, we got. So make sure to go check it out. And remember, the QR code is right over there. Go check that out. Of course, the link is down below as well. Again, do appreciate all of you guys tuning in tonight. Going for another 15 minutes or so. Going to talk as long as we can, but that's my cutoff time. Let's see. Preston Young says last chat. I said Ozzie should stay. Last chat, Ozzie should stay switch hitting. He showed me up. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, every time you make a take, right? Like every time I come up with something, an opinion, you run the risk of being wrong. It's just natural, right? I've been wrong about plenty. I thought the Braves would trade Ozuna, right? That was a common trend. I thought I've had a lot of wrong takes. I've had a lot of right takes too. I think I have more right takes than I have wrong. But I also kind of ride the middle of the wave. I don't ever go hot and cold like that. The reason I say that, in terms of him switch hitting, it's not my position to tell Ozzie Albies he should stop switch hitting. If he feels comfortable hitting, on the left side versus a right-handed pitcher, who am I to tell him that he's wrong? What I will tell you is in the postseason last year, he stayed hitting right no matter what. That is something I just want you to he did. I just want you to take that into consideration because when that happened, it told me either one of two things. Either he feels more comfortable that way, he's looking at the numbers and feel more comfortable that way, or the Braves are looking at the numbers and going, hey, we get it. You like switch hitting. We're all for that and everything, but numbers say you should do this. Let's do this for the postseason. I don't know what that decision came to. I don't know. But it's just something to keep in mind. Thanks, Garrett, for watching. See you later, man. Appreciate it. Miles Elder says, do you think the Braves should trade d'Arnaud since we got Sean now? No. Miles, I would say this. When we got Sean Murphy, there were immediate questions, right? None of them surrounded trading d'Arnaud. And there's a few reasons, but number one, there's space for two catchers on this team. No one expected Ozuna to be what he is. At least no one outside of the Braves camp. No one expected him to be hitting like this for this long. d'Arnaud, because of that, lost at bats. They're working on finding that mix. I don't think he's become an afterthought. I think he's still a leader on this team. I think he's still arguably one of the best catchers in the game, and that's a luxury these days. There's not that many great catchers out there. I mean, think of 10 of them, and I'll be impressed. There's not that many. The reason I say that is the Braves are lucky enough to have two. You do have a huge upside with Murphy's defense, but the way d'Arnaud works with pitchers, I think is unmatched. And Murphy probably too. We haven't seen enough of Murphy to really know that yet. But if you need any proof from d'Arnaud, go look at 2021 postseason. The dude caught every game in the 2021 postseason and before that. Contreras did not touch behind home plate. He hit, but he did not touch behind home plate. There's a reason for that. Youth and inexperience with Contreras at the time, and wealth of knowledge and ability with d'Arnaud. That catcher first. And some of you know this. I'm good friends with Johnny Estrada, who is an all-star catcher, by the way. And I talked to him at the time about Contreras. And one of the biggest question marks with Contreras, and he's obviously, I think, a great talent. I was surprised when we traded him. I thought that wasn't really a weakness. Sean Murphy has shown just how much of a strength it can be, though. But when I was talking to Estrada about it, the conversation was, well, he can hit really well, but he's got to be a catcher first. And that's where I think the disconnect is. d'Arnaud is a catcher first with a terrific bat. That's where I would leave you with. He's a great backup. And there's nothing wrong with having a great backup catcher, especially if he's hitting well like d'Arnaud does. I mean, he did homer tonight. Murphy's also been pretty good this year, I would say. I think he's been okay. He's been all right. I'm just kidding. He's been great. So, no, I don't think we should trade d'Arnaud. In terms of people I think we should trade or could – let me rephrase. In terms of people I think we could trade, the list gets pretty short. It's all about who do you need, right? Think about who you need right now. Think about who you think you might need later. d'Arnaud is one of the ones I think we need later. Murphy's obviously one that we're going to have for a long time. All your position players, Eddie Rosario included, they're not going anywhere. Your Braden Shoemakes, your Vaughn Grissams, being that you got Orlando Arcia for 3 years, those are two candidates. I'm not saying they're both gone, but one of them might be. Because how many depth pieces do you need at shortstop? That's a question I have for you. The other question I think I have is, some of these pitchers. If you can improve at pitching, you might have a package. Prospect, one of the guys that just haven't worked out. There's plenty there. I'm not going to go into names there, but there are plenty there. Shortstop is more specific. And I'm not fully aware of what we have at the prospect level completely because it's so diluted right now. You don't really know what we got. But I think there are definite arms you could trade if you wanted to. But I think the prime guys that you're going to know name value of and you're going to know how important they are Vaughn Grissom and Braden Shoemake. Originally, I had said maybe you could trade both of them with Ozuna, but being that you have right now with the success you have Ozuna with, do you want to get rid of him? You know, d'Arnaud's never been a trade option in my mind. Granted, neither was Contreras, but that's where we are. So I don't think d'Arnaud's going anywhere, personally. Okay, you say, I mainly mentioned it since it seems that Braves couldn't trade Ozuna, and between the two, they are both solid DHs. Completely understood, but catchers need days off, more so than any other position. And if you take d'Arnaud out, you have, what, Chadwick Tromp? I mean, that's where I lose you there. If he was just a DH, yes, but he's not. He's a lot more than that. I get where you're going with it, but I would say no. I just don't think so. I could be wrong, but I just don't think so. Good question, though. Z-Corp, thank you for watching. Really do appreciate it, and thank you for the super chats. I know you're heading out. We're not going to be here much longer, so make sure to get your questions in because we are wrapping it up very, very soon. On the go with CeeLo staying with us late. Appreciate that. He said it was a good outing for Jimenez tonight. Absolutely. And I have it circled right here, top of the 8th inning, when he went 2 scoreless. That's when I was like, okay, that's our opening. That's when the Braves are going to come back. Again, we're going to wrap up with this, and I think we're going to be done for the night. Huge win for the Braves. Not only tonight, but the sweep of the series. Anytime you sweep the Mets, it's a good day. But especially this early in the season, especially this compared to where we were last year to where we are now in relation to games back and games above other teams, I think it's a great place to be, especially considering how much the Braves have lost. The Braves still hold a 3.5-game lead in the NL East over the Marlins. The Mets are in 4th place, which is always a good thing to hear. But the Braves got to continue. They got a long stretch without Kyle Wright. They have a long stretch without Max Fried. We'll see how it goes. Remember, before you do leave, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications so that you can stay updated with everything going on here on deck and, of course, with the Atlanta Braves. And don't forget to go check out the On Deck shop where we have these hats, we have hoodies, we have shirts, we have long sleeve shirts, short sleeve shirts, lanyards, banners, pennants, water bottles, whatever the case may be. Go check out the On Deck shop. Really would appreciate that. And with that, we are going to wrap up the show. Again, thank you guys for tuning in, and remember to please like and subscribe. On that note, guys, we're going to see you later right here at On Deck. Talk to you later. Bye.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.
Hank Aaron, oh, this is a great story. He was the minor league director when I was drafted in 1976. I was playing semi-pro baseball out in Eureka, California. My dad was at my house. Hank Aaron was the minor league director. I get drafted in the 5th round in 1976. Hank Aaron calls my house. My dad answers the phone. And he says, Mr. Benedict? He said, yeah. He goes, this is Hank Aaron, Atlanta Braves. He says, yeah, right. Hangs up. Hank Aaron, just true story. Hank calls back, says the same thing. Mr. Benedict, your son Bruce Benedict, yeah, right. Hangs up on Hank Aaron. Finally, the 3rd time, he said, Dave, we drafted your son in the 5th round. Please don't hang up, whatever. So I said to my dad's dying dad, I said, Dad, you're the only human being in the history of the world in communication that's hung up on Hank Aaron twice on a phone call. But that happened. My dad was in Omaha, Nebraska. After that, my dad called me. I was in Eureka, California, playing for the Humboldt State Crabs, and then flew to Atlanta and worked out, and then signed.
I might say about Hank. I was in the major leagues when he took over the minor leagues, so I didn't really have like direct contact with him, but he came down and talked to me, about hitting every once in a while, but he never came down unless he was invited. I'm sure he was up there a lot of times in his office, Fulton County Stadium, going, what is Murph doing? But he always respected our hitting coaches, and when he came down there and talked to me about hitting, I'd be like in the back of my mind, yeah, you're Hank Aaron, man. It's like when I met Ted Williams at the Hall of Fame game one year, guys. Remember we used to do that? He watched all the games on TBS. And he goes, Dale Murphy, yeah, good to meet you. This is Ted Williams. You got to get a better pitch to hit. I'm like, you're Ted Williams, man. That's easy for you to say. You struck out 20 times a year. Anyway.
You mentioned maybe Sned could shed some light on this a little bit because he called all the time. We lost Phil Negro in the last year. And ladies and gentlemen, maybe the finest Hall of Famer, maybe of all time that you would ever come across in a nice person.
And it was pretty amazing to have Hank and Nuxie. I mean, some really great individuals. Let me just ask Benny this. What did Nuxie say about you in the Hall of Fame?
Every place I ever went with Phil, and we did some charity stuff every year, the first thing he said, he goes, I'm not in the Hall of Fame without him.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.